I'm going to play this clip here. So Chris Smalls, the president of the Amazon Labor Union, went on television, I believe this is CNBC, to discuss the union situation. And, I just want to play this clip because I think it's pretty good. So let's watch.
The revolution is here. That's what we just witnessed on Friday. We're going to organize buildings all across the nation. We in the last 72 hours, we've been contacted from workers all over the world. So they want to unionize. We're going to absolutely help them. We're going to get it done here in New York first. We have another election coming up in 3 weeks. So we're right back at the campaign, on the campaign trail. And once we're finished here in New York, we're going to spread just like the Starbucks movement is spreading across the nation.
So this is great. Now, again, the thing about unions, the thing about community organizing is there's a domino effect, exponential returns over time. One person, like one union becoming successful will make it so that, potentially hundreds of unions over the next 10 years will see that, right? Or companies or organizations or plants or factories will see that. They will go like, we can do that. And again, every single success builds off of the previous. And again, exponential returns. You look at Starbucks. Starbucks has been unionizing like crazy. I think there's like 5 or 6 that I've seen unionized over the course of the last year or two. And so that's great. This is wonderful. And ultimately, the important part that can be learned from these union victories is that you don't need to rely on anybody. You don't need to ask Big Daddy, Big Mommy to approve of your plan. You could take that plan that you have and put it into action with your fellow workers. That is the ultimate goal here. Now, again, Amazon and Starbucks, giant corporations, right, that are honestly some of the most evil corporations to ever exist, right? The CEOs of which are some of the biggest enemies of humanity to ever walk the face of this earth. Jeff Bezos, Howard Schultz, etc. Some of the biggest enemies of humanity ever. To ever exist, to ever be spawned into existence, and then live the lives that they had. These people are monsters. And again, it needs to be understood as well that CEOs of these companies are slave owners, not only in a figurative sense, like as I described before in my show, where I think everyone is to some degree in slavery. But look at Howard Schultz at Starbucks, for example. Where does he source his coffee? Look at Amazon, for example. Where do they get a lot of their extremely cheap items? Where? From countries, not in the United States, that profit off of child labor and slave labor. So not only are these people in their own ways enslaving people in the United States, but they are actively encouraging slavery overseas. And that is an important thing to understand, right? Is that it is completely unnecessary. But the only reason they do that, the only reason they have contracts with child laborers, why? Is to make more money for themselves. They are evil. Pure, unadulterated evil is what CEOs of these companies are. Jeff Bezos is a supervillain. He is evil to his core. Every fiber of his being is evil. The same with Howard Schultz, the same with Elon Musk and these other CEOs. They are pure evil. Like that episode of SpongeBob or whatever, where it's like plankton goes into the thing and it's like 99% evil, 1% hot gas or whatever. That's in this. If you were to put CEOs in those machines in SpongeBob, it would be 100% evil, or 99% evil, 1% hot gas. That also works. But also, it needs to be understood. And again, this is not like the only things that actually exist in this world, right? There's no such thing as the worker-employee or employer and employee relationship that's made up. That doesn't exist. That's not like a natural law of physics that we need owners to guide us. We don't need owners. Humans lived and flourished for thousands of years without owners. We don't need owners, right? The only things that matter at the end of the day are how can we have food and water and shelter. Everything else that gets in the way of those goals is made up. We have enough shelter for every human on earth to flourish, to do whatever they want for the rest of their lives. We have enough food and water production chains for every human on earth to flourish, to live the healthiest life imaginable. So it needs to be understood, again, workers getting together and unionizing all across this country is going to create an exponential effect. But it needs to also be understood that CEOs aren't just going to sit back and watch it happen. They're going to do their best to combat this. They're going to do their best to break up unions. They're going to do their best, because this is not the first time in American history where unions became mainstream and popular. Look at the history of the New Deal, for example, all the way up until the 1980s. Unions used to be extremely popular in this country, and then decades and decades of propaganda and bad legislation broke them up and destroyed them. So again, how do we learn from the mistakes of our ancestors? The biggest way to learn from our mistakes is to not give up. And so again, Chris Small's going on television saying that the revolution is here, and that, again, he and the Amazon Labor Union, that one in New York, are going to branch off to more plants, to more factories, to more whatever groups, right? And again, Amazon Labor and Starbucks Labor unions can, again, they can work together to try to help other unions or unionizing efforts. And again, the more and more that this happens, it's going to have an exponential effect. And again, we also need to understand that we need to protect the gains, because gains are not, it's not like we win. It's not like you tally something into a piece of rock, right? And you can't erase the tally, right? Right? We're drawing in pencil right now. And the CEOs and the government, they've got a lot of erasers, and they're going to do their best to undo our gains. So not only do we need to gain, not only do we need to win, right, as a class, but what we need to do is cement those gains, cement those wins for future generations. Like the generations before us did. They gave us things, right, like abolishing child labor in this country, right, like the 40-hour work week. Those were things that seem normal now, but only because of the blood, sweat, and tears of our ancestors in this country. They fought and died. They were massacred by the government, massacred by the owners. But at the end of the day, they did secure some rights. And again, we had a lot more rights as a class in this country before. And they've been slowly whittled away. They will whittle away anything that they can at any point that they can. Right? So on top of everything, we must remain vigilant. And we must be sure that the gains are not undone. So there you go.